had no idea where Charlotte and Peggy were. I assumed they'd already passed through the closed door and were waiting for me. At least, I hoped that was the case. What if they'd gone back to the car and left me all alone? Charlotte needed to open the door for me if it was locked, but like I said, she wasn't always the best at channeling energy to move things, though she would claim she was the best. I yanked on the door, and thank goodness it was unlocked. I hurried inside the building. The kitchen was quiet, and I assumed everyone was on stage practicing. I rushed through the room and over to the steps that led to the basement. Of course, it was dark down there. I flipped the switch on the wall. The dim light came on, but it was little help. Why couldn't they add brighter lights down there? It was almost as if they wanted everyone to be afraid. Once at the end of the hall, I reached the costume room. The room was a pitch-black void. Anyone could be hiding in there, and I wouldn't see them. I eased into the room just a bit so that I could reach the light switch on the wall beside the door. After fumbling for several seconds and starting to panic, I flipped the switch. The fluorescent light added an eerie glow across the room. It felt as if someone might be hiding behind any number of objects in the room. The mannequins always made me think I spotted someone out of the corner of my eye. I was definitely more afraid of the living than the ghosts. "Where's the dress?" I asked Peggy. "Over in the trunk." She pointed. I rushed over to the trunk and popped open the lid. The beautiful clothing was just as I left it. Now to find the dress. "There it is. The red one right there," Peggy said. I pulled out the dress. "It is beautiful. I can see why it would be your favorite. I bet it looks gorgeous on you." The halter-style dress had layers of red tulle around the skirt. It was cocktail length and had a silk sash around the waist. Peggy stared at the dress as I held it up. "I just can't figure out what it is about it." "Maybe it's just your favorite dress," I said. She shook her head. "I think there's more to it than that." "It's a dress. What could it possibly mean?" Charlotte asked. "Oh, I know. Maybe someone gave it to you," I said. Peggy nodded. "That's true, but sadly, I don't remember. Maybe it will come back to you." I placed the dress back on top of the trunk. "I hate to leave the dress in this trunk." Charlotte eyed me disapprovingly. I knew what she was thinking. She thought I wanted the dress for myself. That wasn't the case. Sure, it was beautiful, but I didn't have to take all vintage pieces I found. If that was the case, I would already have taken all the items in this trunk. "I suppose I could take it back to the shop. Maybe if you see it more often, it will trigger a memory," I said. "Good idea," Peggy said. Charlotte shook her head. "How sweet of you." Voices carried down the hall to the costume room. I froze on the spot. "Is someone coming?" Charlotte asked. "It sounds like someone is coming down here," Peggy said. Peggy and Charlotte went to the door and peered out. "I don't see anyone," Charlotte said. Another ghost? I hoped not, although that would be much better than a potential killer. The ghost of Morris would certainly help right about now. I gathered the dress and hurried over to the door. No one was in the hall, but the voices carried from somewhere nearby. People were arguing, but I couldn't make out what was said. I was almost afraid to find out. What if the killer had come back to the theater? I eased out of the room and down the hall. I turned off the light in the costume room, so it wasn't as lit as before. Still, I moved up the stairs. The arguing had stopped, but the silence was just as scary. I almost reached the top of the stairs